Welcome back, Guardians. You may be watching this on Sir Wallen's YouTube channel, My Name is Byf's YouTube channel, or my YouTube channel, which is MyelinGames. Links to all channels are below. Everyone here has a passion for Destiny lore, and so we have joined forces to discuss what we want to see in Destiny 2 from a lore point of view. Sir Wallen, kick this discussion off.
So the first one, I only have three. I'll keep it nice and brief. The first one is I'm very curious to see about the Rasputin story arc. I feel that there's a lot of good information that's been dropped about its capabilities, what its true motivations may be, and how it affects the overall story. But I feel like there's a lot of information that isn't explained, specifically stuff before the collapse and during the Golden Age, how it was developed, who made it, is it an enemy, is it a friend, did it go after the Traveler, did it not? Those are a lot of questions that I'd like to see answered. Because it just isn't, it's one of those things where he's always been hinted at, he's always been talked about, and we finally saw a little bit of him in Taken King and a little bit before that. But now we actually get an expansion pack in Destiny 2 for him, and I think that's going to be really, really interesting. I just hope they do it right. That's all.
Oh yeah,
I completely agree with Rasputin. I didn't realize, I was a little bit ignorant to the sort of debate about Rasputin in the community with shooting down the Traveler, and I think you guys might have noticed I probably implied that it was factual that Rasputin shot the Traveler when that's not necessarily the case. I think there is hint that wasn't a possibility, and the flip side of that is it was just a plan for Rasputin to shoot down the Traveler. So definitely we'll be looking out for that in D2 to see if they confirm what crippled the Traveler. Was it the darkness itself, or did Rasputin's plan to stop it from leaving us in the face of the darkness, did it do that? So I'm really interested to see what they do with Rasputin. And I think Rasputin went from this really unknown entity to being such a plot pivotal character now, and actually, I don't even know if we'll see it in Destiny 2. This might be a longer story arc.
And there's always, it's something that we have to keep in mind, especially seeing as you made it was like a year ago that you made the very astute observation that Rasputin is the one that gave the last command of Siva. So, realistically speaking, wherever Rasputin jumps up, there's a chance that we may see the Siva return, either in the form of the Splicers, which I find unlikely now, given the Fallen have burned their banners, or alternatively, in some kind of other form. Imagine if we suddenly see those constructs, those frames, things that Saladin hasn't seen before or since. I want to fight that. I want that to be a new alien race.
That is really cool, the stuff about the frames, because what are they? Specifically, since it's Saladin, right, that says things we haven't seen before or since, so it's something that we haven't come across yet. And the other really interesting thing you mentioned about Siva was the Malahayati with that AI ship or whatever got those commands from Rasputin and was sent into space, like carrying Siva. We don't know whatever happened to that. So there's a ship floating around with Siva with orders from Rasputin, the tyrant. So there's some cool stuff going on there.
Do you think there's a possibility, though, that Rasputin could actually be like a bad guy, could not be working with us, and not necessarily see us as enemies, but see the Traveler as enemies, and only using humanity and like the Exos and the Awoken as more of like proxies to fight a war for it, as opposed to, actually winning the war? He wants us to be free from the Traveler, potentially.
I definitely think that's a possibility. I think that's what they're sort of hinting at with saying that Rasputin hasn't been a war-minded in so very long, and for him turning off his protocols, I think that's definitely what they want to portray, is the mystery. We don't know what side Rasputin is on at the moment.
So it goes back to the Bungie, and this is something that you find with a ton of their games. They like to take stories and make them cyclical throughout their games and just revisit the same theme over and over again. So in particular, this makes me think back to Marathon, where in the original, the UEG Marathon is under attack, and it turns out that one of the AIs goes rampant and starts, aiding the aliens that are invading, but eventually the story arc goes in such a way that they actually return to our side and start fighting for good. So I feel like that's the story arc they may take with this one, but this is a very different Bungie from the one that we had, say, 2 decades ago. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see where they actually take this one, but it is still a possibility that he could also shift for good.
Yeah. Okay. Want to go into the next thing in your list there, Wally?
Yeah, so Toland the Shattered, where we last left Toland, I think it was one of those things that was semi up in the air. There was the thing where he was in the Ascendant Realm, and we were in the Throne Room of Oryx, or in the Ascendant Realm of Oryx, and we were leaving as Guardians, and he was asking, where are you going? Why are you leaving? What are you doing? He expected us to take that next step and take up the mantle of Taken King, as it is, as he calls it, the ultimate law of the universe, the law of killing, the law of efficiency. And he was, I don't think appalled, but maybe disappointed that we didn't take that step because he sees it so clearly and we don't. And maybe there's a chance there for him to turn into the next Taken King or a potential enemy of us. I don't know. I hope not. I think he's too cool of a character to make it into a bad guy. I think that's too cliche. I honestly hope they don't do that. But
I mean, you're right when you say it's cliche, but I hope so, because if they go in a direction with Toland where they can make him an antagonist, imagine having someone who is an enemy that can actually talk to us, right?
True.
Destiny's enemies have always been, Oryx, for example. We see a few lines of dialogue from him, but realistically, they're one of the only enemies that actually ever speaks to us. They're the only ones with character development. Toland could be Destiny's greatest villain if they just let that story arc be a thing, and that's what I'd really love to see out of that. The other interesting thing, too, is, I wonder whether Toland would really second-guess himself about the whole sword logic thing, He talks in the final encounter when we destroy the Taken King about how did you manage to kill him with that light? It was barely even light anymore, So it's one of those moments where even he has to take a look at all of his ideas of the sword logic truly being the king of the universe and the final law. And maybe he has to sort of take a step back and think, well, maybe the light's got something to it. Maybe there's a law of freedom that can work alongside the logic of the sword and be stronger, if not equally as strong.
I agree.
Questions.
Like when he's in the Hive overworld, I'm quite sure there's a card that mentions that he says, I will stay here and gather information or something like that, or I will map this area. I'm not too sure if you guys remember the exact quote, but it sort of implies that he's going to be our spy on the other side, essentially, gathering information about the Hive. And then sort of as those cards progress, you sort of feel like, if a spy spent too long in enemy territory, they start to sort of be the enemy. They start to go AWOL. So, and I think that's sort of what they wanted to pose with Toland. Has he been in the Hive sort of overworld too long, and has he changed his mind on what the philosophy should be? Should it be creating the perfect universe through having the pinnacle and cutting out any weakness, or should it be through the light? But the interesting thing you mentioned, Byf, is sort of, well, is the light doing that anyway? He sort of said, well, you're sort of doing the sword logic. You're sort of doing the philosophy of the deep. You've just killed Oryx. You've proven you are part of the final universe. Why haven't you taken the mantle? So I agree, man. I hope we see Toland. If we see him as a baddie, that'll be fantastic. If he remains as an ally, as long as we get to see what he looks like, I'll be happy.
I want to hear him talk. He has a voice actor set aside and everything. He even commentates the first reveal trailer they had for Taken King. So, get more of that in there, man. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a very short Toland's journal scene. I can't remember what mission it is. And your ghost's like, oh, he would be great at a party.
Lost to Light, yeah. Toland wasn't much fun at parties.
Yeah, that's the one. Fantastic.
Yeah, Wally, third mystery, man. Hit us with it.
So, Exo Origins. I think this one makes more sense, and it's more painted out, but I'd like to see it fleshed out a little bit more. I'd like to see that deep stone crypt that they continually talk about, that it's something that comes up in Cage Treasure Island narrative, and then it comes up in the deep stone crypt, and then some of the other items that drop out. It's one of those interesting things, like, how did humanity during the Golden Age, if this is true, transfer human consciousness to an exo frame? How does that make sense? Is that really immortality, or is it just a copy of a person who's now dead? These are the questions that I'd like to see answered. And when I covered it in my Cade video, and I think you touched on this a bit too, Matt, in yours, is that, or I believe it was, I think you both have done Cade videos where you've touched on his exo origins just a little bit. It's one of those concepts where the exos go through memory wipes, and the number that is associated with their name is the amount of memory wipes they've had. But Cade is one of the few characters that has a recollection of the Golden Age and before it.
Yeah,
I'd love to see more
least
information on
tries
that.
to remember, right? Because like every exo is always going to forget things because of the wipes, but with him, that's why he's got all the cards around. So
yeah, I really dig that I love Cade, the idea of Cade being a broken hero, and I love the idea of his gambling addiction trying to support refinding his memory, and how cards represent pieces of his memory that he keeps trying to get back. The hearts representing that true love, and that his memory's been wiped. And so you imagine this character that surrounds himself with gambling and cards because it's symbolic of him trying to remember his past. And Cade is a unique character because he does try to scratch the itch that most leave unscratched about their past. So love the Cade's journal, the Treasure Island, and the idea of finding out about the true exo origins would be really exciting.
it's also something which I think if we're going to see something about it, we might see it within that second DLC on the War Mines, because if all lore indications are to be taken as 100% true, then it's probably the case that Clovis Bray were the ones that invented the War Mines as well as the ones who seeded the consciousness of the Exos.
Yeah.
So the two may be intrinsically linked. The other thing to note, of course, is that one infamous line from Timur when he's in his Grimoire card talking to Fellwinter, who of course is an Exo.
Yeah.
He, he throws the idea out of saying, well, how much are you linked? Are you controlled by a War Mind? That kind of thing. So at the end of the day...
And he also says, meet our maker as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's one of those moments where you start to really solidify the link between the two. And the other thing I think from a gameplay aspect is you need to sit down and think about whether that means we'll have race-specific quests, right? So maybe with the Awoken, it's something where you do need to travel to the reef and you sit there and you find the point at which light and darkness merge to create that. Maybe with humanity, it's about finding something that is a true relic of human civilization. And for them, that's always their drive. It's to rediscover their golden age. And for the Exos, it's, understanding the Deep Stone Crypt and understanding where they came from.
Mm. And that battle between the Exos and the Vex? What is that about?
I didn't even think about it in the Vault cards, yeah.
What is that about?
It makes you wonder whether that was the first tide of darkness coming through, some kind of war with Exos and Vex that really started the collapse. That would be a really interesting plotline if that's actually what's happening.
Right. What's next on the list?
Okay, well, those are my three topics, so
great.
Byf, you want to hit us with what you got?
So yeah, first of all, and this is going to be... All of mine are pretty obvious ones, to be honest, but all of them have quite a lot of big significance for it. The first one, obviously, has to be Osiris for me, right? So aside from the fact that Osiris is one of those characters that just keeps on popping up in the lore, they're popping up for very good reasons, They are one of the most important figures, politically speaking, in the history's city. And seeing the interactions from characters between, say, Osiris and the Speaker or Osiris and Zavala, especially all of the built-up history between those guys... It would be an incredibly interesting cutscene or bit of dialogue, to say the very least, to watch them come home and then see Osiris is there, and then, how does the Speaker react to one that has incited near open rebellion against him and his ideas, and at the same time one that he has called his apprentice, his student, and one that he very clearly still values as a friend. And
I totally forgot about that. He was the apprentice of the Speaker.
Yeah,
I totally forgot about that until you mentioned that.
It's like the character dialogues between it all. It's so neat, they kept on talking about how Destiny was going to be Star Wars like in terms of everything to do with it in the universe they built. But this for me is the point at which it really does flex that out. You're looking at a real dynamic here where master and student have been forced into some kind of intellectual conflict and they're flipped on each other's heads. And with the city potentially destroyed, you have to then imagine, does that mean the Speaker is all of a sudden, under the thumb of Osiris? Is Osiris all of a sudden the master to the student? Like, how does that dynamic work anymore, His way was perhaps proven correct simply by the city's destruction.
Osiris, for me, is the the crossroads for all the different plot lines. You know, you have Toland in the Hive overworld, and he shouts, "Osiris, Osiris!" You know, where are you, Osiris? And then you've got cards that talk about how are the Vex gate systems and the Hive Netherrealm connected. And so we've got this plot line of the Hive and interesting characters like Toland sort of converging towards plot lines like Osiris involving the Vex. And I think that is a way they might bring back in those different story arcs is using Osiris as a conflux for that. And I do think that Osiris has developed some techniques from the Vex that allows him to do things that we can't do. Similar to how Toland developed Hive techniques by learning the Death Singer song and dying and going to the Hive overworld. I feel like Osiris is the Vex version of that he has some way of traveling through that system. And we see that in the parables of the Allspring. It talks about becoming more than a guardian. Even if you hang around Brother Vance long enough, he says stuff like, "I was once a guardian, now I'm more." And this idea of like evolving to something else. So
and what's more, you can potentially, I don't want to say this is the case because this would be absolutely throwing some tinfoil theory out there, but imagine all the way back to the Battle of the Six Fronts, you know? It was said that he was in more than one place all at the same time, you know, constantly teleporting around.
Right.
And it makes you think, like, how is that possible unless you've got some kind of time turner or time travel or something like that? But even more, you know, like, okay, name them number one most badass Titan in the entire lore who has headbutted a Kale to death.
Same 14, yeah. I mean,
do we get points?
Right? Like, it's there's so many heroes that revolve around Osiris, you know? We bring him in there, there's probably going to be like a Saint 14 quest, right?
Byf, what if I said Brazil Azir rather than Saint 14? Sorry.
You piss off a lot of people who think he's a hunter, you know what I mean? But,
oh, God. Oh, man, let's not even get into that just yet.
I think the Osiris thing is probably one of the most influential. He is arguably one of the most influential characters across the entire history. I feel that the pieces we've seen of him, unfortunately, so far have been cuts and snippets kind of meshed together. I'm very curious to see what the entire point of the trials is. Is he building an army? Is he trying to weed out the weakest of guardians and recruit the strongest for some type of ulterior purpose? Maybe it is to overthrow the speaker and come back in, or maybe it's just for a separate war, a more important war that we don't see right now. We only see things in front of us as they come, and we're very reactionary as guardians to any threats that come to the city. But there could be something way out there, way far in the future that overlooms every single threat, and he could be preparing us for that with trials, or it could be something else. I'm very curious to see that as well.
I love I can't remember which card it is, but it talks about trials, and it needs guardians that have more than luck. It's fate. It's their destiny to win 9 matches in a row, and to go unbeatable. So, yeah, that's why I've never got to the lighthouse, or I very rarely get to the lighthouse.
Yeah, following up to the Osiris though, anybody who watches my channel knows that I'm sitting here with probably the biggest hard-on for dragons in the entire Destiny community. So, I mean, it's got to be the Ahamkara, for me, is another one that we absolutely need to explore somehow. I'd be really disappointed if, especially given the premise of Welcome to a World Without Light, we don't see something to do with wish dragons in Destiny 2. As a way of saying, well, hey, maybe this is an avenue to which we could regain our powers. But also, it brings up these amazing potential locations for us to go, right? The Ahamkara are not only one of the most enigmatic and interesting sets of individuals within the story, but also they've provided an amazing amount of gear for us, and there's indications that if we do follow that storyline, it brings us to the Jovian moons. So you're looking at places like Europa and Io and Ganymede. There's so much real estate just from explorable worlds there that we can really tuck into and get to. So that excites me on its own, but aside from that, do I really need to explain the premise of dragons are awesome? Can we have dragons? More dragons, please.
Space dragons. Well,
yeah.
The interesting thing with that, and the I think such a tease from Bungie was the introduction of Bones of Ao as an item that
defy extinction.
Right? You
Kills me.
You have the boots. This says, sorry, not Bones of Ao, Knuckles of Ao. I was meaning to talk about, which is the, when you use them and you get an extra drop from your raid completions, and it says your gamer tag. What does it say? Has made a bargain.
Has their wish granted.
Has their wish granted.
Yeah, and on the description of the item, it's boons I grant you, O bearer mine, but debts to be repaid in time. And of course, if anybody knows the premise of the Ahamkara as wish dragons, it's that they will give you whatever that wish is, but there is often kind of like a devil's deal down the line where they will take something back, and it's a raw deal potentially. There's a reason why they were supposedly hunted.
Well, isn't there to get the debt?
Isn't there a connection between the Ahamkara and the Worm Gods? There's a couple cards in the Books of Sorrow that specifically have the same phrasing, O bearer of mine, O reader of mine, that type of thing.
O prince ours. And then on top of that, it's later down the line when they're assaulting, I believe it's the Harmony, where Shiva Wrath talks about wish dragons and says, the dragons are an offense to me. Our gods should be ours alone. So, you're sitting there with evidence that clearly ties them, at least into what I would think is the same species as the worm gods that the Hive worship. But at the same time, that makes you question, when's the next big Hive expansion going to be? Or is that something they want to push all the way back for Destiny 3? Because, when you get into that level of the Hive Pantheon, you're inevitably involving both Shiva Wrath and Savathun. You're going through the rest of what we didn't kill after Oryx died. So there's a whole load of power struggle questions there. There's a whole load of stuff to do with, well, what about Toland? What about Aya and and Zol and Yul? Who do we have left to deal with? We have a ton of powerful characters down the line on that front, and it's really weird to know which way it's going to go. So yeah, it's really interesting just because it unlocks that story context as well.
I'm looking forward to it. I can't tell you enough. I found that one of my most popular videos was the Ahamkara video, and I think it was popular just because the way I wrote it, as if it was an
actual
character,
encounter with dragons, right?
Yeah, like he was getting his mind was slowly sipping to this thing where he had to continue to do deeds so that the dragons would grant him these things, and it was like trying to convince other guardians to do the same. That entire concept of what are these debts? What do we have to pay? And ultimately, can we count on these dragons to be our allies? I don't think we can, just by the nature of things. With anything that gives you a raw deal, technically isn't your friend. But it's one of those things that I hope we explore for Destiny 2.
I just keep imagining this massive dragon and a guardian and a team of 6 guardians with tracking rocket launchers. Locking on, and then a barrage of missiles fly towards the dragon, like in some sort of raid scenario to down the dragon. So then you run, get your swords and you run at the dragon. Oh my god,
yes.
Aim.
Dragon
fire.
Raid is that's the stuff of dreams right there.
Dragon
That's like
Raid,
Destiny at its peak.
10 out of 10.
If you ever wonder why we love the lore so much, that idea there, just the tantalizing thought right there, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah. Third of all on this list for me, though, it's undoubtedly got to be the Shadows of Yore. So, this is the thing. Out of all the storylines that I think are recognizable to players within Destiny, I think The Last Word and Thorn is easily up there at the top. But over the 3 years in which the vanilla Destiny experience has evolved and expansions have been added and grimoire cards with updates have been released as well, we've slowly we've seen that story evolve into something where it's almost completely unexpected by the end, because now that we've added Last Word 5 and Thorn 5, and also of course the Razor Lazir cards and the Shadow of Yore card and the Crucible grimoire cards, wow, that became it took what I thought was going to be like a cautionary tale and just an origin story of 2 exotics, and it all of a sudden created new legs to this story, which potentially lead us down a pathway where we could obtain powers from the darkness, or alternatively it gives us this amazing set of enemies. It means that we could run into Shin Malphur as a guardian companion. there's all sorts of things that we could potentially experience if we go down this particular storyline. And the amazing thing too is that it's something totally different, because we've always been facing minions of the darkness that are aliens. We've never actually fought up against a guardian in terms of a PvE context, you know? And I want to see what that's like. I want to see how powerful they are, and I want to see where that storyline really goes if it's a thing, you know? And there's the bigger question too of, do the Shadows of Yore and Shin Malphur present like a mutually exclusive choice, you know? Is it one of those weird moments where Destiny may say, okay, so you can either enforce your powers of the light, or you can choose to learn something totally new with the darkness?
Oh, we would have
That's
a lot
something
of Dark
that
Guardians.
Oh yeah.
I can say right now, my Hunter, straight to the darkness. My Titan, straight to the light. My Warlock could dabble in both, for all I know, if that's possible.
Of course, it's a Warlock. Of course
Yeah,
it
oh,
does.
We nature of the darkness and all that. But again, it's such an interesting choice there, and I wonder whether if they were going to do something like that, it would be learn from both and then conclude the story, or whether it would be this mutually exclusive choice, which I don't think it would be in terms of Destiny, because that's not their design philosophy. But still, it presents like a really cool opportunity for everybody to sort of come together around this legendary pair of guardians and these two legendary weapons. I say legendary weapons, but you understand the context, right?
Yeah.
So we have Shin Malphur still out there. We haven't exactly seen the end of his story arc. We know Jaren Ward and Pondin and those characters have all been taken out. But the curious thing is to see there's that gap in the storyline where Raziel Azir becomes Dredgen Yor. There's that gap. How did that transformation happen? We can make some pretty good assumptions and assume that it became over time kind of thing. But I'd like to see more of that character fleshed out in that transformation stage, because that's probably the most crucial point when a person goes from good to just plain awful and evil. I mean, you have to see his motivations and why he was doing it. It's shown in some of the Raziel cards that his motivation was he doesn't want to be forgotten. This guy has a legacy that he was there in the beginning. He was there when the walls were built, and then he just doesn't want to become a footnote to history. So he has to go this length to be remembered, but now he's remembered in a negative light and in a negative context. It's one of those things that's destroying to see other characters, because a lot of Guardians sort of had this same thing where they go for glory and want to be remembered and want to be known, but how far does that go?
Yeah, it's interesting because the Shadows of Yore sort of acknowledge that, and they sort of say that Dredgen Yor did the ultimate sacrifice. Like, he sought that power as a sacrifice, and they sort of try to spin it in another direction. Like, don't you see, this is what we have to do to defend. Like, we have to sacrifice our light, basically, to become these, dark guardians. I think that's what's so interesting. It's very similar to the conversation we had with Toland before. And so it sort of mirrors that as well. And, I don't know what you guys think about. I strongly believe that Raziel Azir did become Dredgen Yor, but there are some items that, people often bring up, the Dredgen Yor's cape and these other bits and pieces. Do you think they'll address some of those issues in the story, or do you think they'll always leave that to speculation and interpretation? Or do you think we'll ever come out and find out for certain Dredgen Yor's identity?
I think that with all of that, people could go ahead and throw it down purely to the speculation of it's a Jekyll and Hyde situation. So, in one sense, you have the Titan, Raziel Azir, who is, clearly a striker given what he did to the fallen Kel at one point.
That was so cool.
It's I really want to portray that at some point in a video. Oh my gosh, it's going to be so cool. But, yeah, clearly is someone who defends the light. Prideful, though. And that's the joining point between them and Dredgen Yor. And I think this is something that I'd throw out there with a lot of, pinches of salt, so to speak. But it makes me wonder whether the twisting and the corruption couldn't possibly take any of the powers he has and twist them into something totally different. It makes me wonder whether that would imply some kind of transformation from Titan to Hunter. But at the same time, we don't know. And also, take a look at Saladin. Saladin is a Titan that wears a cloak too. So who's to say that... he wasn't the first to invent that fashion statement. Or isn't at least one of the only ones to pick it up. So, yeah. And
I think with I did a video about sort of hunter cloaks, and they're worn as trophies, so I wouldn't go past a dark sort of character to kill hunters and take their cloaks as a sort of final reminder of the people that he's killed.
Hunters such as Pahanin, perhaps?
True. Right.
I mean, take a look at the Pahanin errata, the artifact in the book that is filled with all of Pahanin's little quips, you know? It's got the same symbol on the front as the one on Dredgenyor's cloak. So, yeah, maybe. But, you know, that's
now we've
just
triggered everyone with this conversation. You watch every comment to be about this now.
Yeah, and it is also, I mean, it is also the aspect of blood, so it's like the generic hunter symbol. So, you know, call it what you will.
Yeah. Was that your list, Byf? Is that your 3?
Yeah, that is my 3. That is my list. But what about you, Matt? You've got some stuff you want to throw out there.
So I've been the kid that read the question wrong in the exam and has written completely the wrong answers. So when I thought about what I want from a lore point of view in Destiny, I thought about, rather than story arcs, I thought about sort of bigger, maybe even sort of mechanics in the game. And so one of the things, obviously at the top of my list, is in-game lore, a directory, a way of reading the Grimoire cards in the game. Do you guys have thoughts about that, apart from the overwhelming sort of support?
Apart from do it already, please.
I mean, I think it makes a ton of sense. I don't think the UI was there this time around for them to do it, unfortunately. I think the third-party system that they have set up sort of allowed for all of these, like the Ishtar Collective and Destinypedia, to exist because the Bungie site is so janky, restrictive, not really awesome. So I don't want to be bad-mouthing, but it's just one of those things that unfortunately it's very difficult. And this thing that we've constantly seen from the beginning of the game is players want to know more about the universe they're playing in. Give them that access. 100%
accessible
agree with
way.
Yeah.
You can do it in Dark Souls fashion as long as you actually make it accessible, you know? And that's fine. Like, people can learn from flavor text and get all the items and get the story together and make their theories, but don't force them to, you know, not only store all of the blues and greens, which the story is stored in, but also don't force them to leave the game, go to Bungie.net to read up on something about Razor Lazir and Dredgenyor. Well, I say as if they're two different people. Maybe they are, maybe they're not. Point is this: don't make them leave the game. Don't do it. You know. Yeah. Also, I've got to say this: they built books for achievements into the game. Throw that as literally a grimoire is defined as a warlock's book of spells and recipes. Give us a literal grimoire in our inventory. You know, have us open it as a book. You know?
And what are your thoughts about actually having some of those cards narrated, like they do in Mass Effect, like important ones? So you could go into a codex type of thing, and not all of them, but some of them would be narrated.
That's our job, bro.
Oh,
I mean,
God.
Am I
Please
looking at
don't
that
do
like way
Bungie.
wrong? I feel threatened. No, I feel threatened. I'd be like,
I mean,
shit.
dude, I think we'd all get the same comments on our channel, being like, "Oh, why didn't Bungie hire you guys to read these cards?" Jeez. Like that will literally be all our comment sections all the time. Oh, it would be crazy.
So that's my first one. In-game access to a directory, a codex, the Grimoire cards, however it's presented. And I think you sort of brought up the next point for me too, which was I hope they keep that Dark Souls complexity. I don't want to be spoon-fed the lore. I want it to be more accessible, but not to the point where there is no interpretation and there's no puzzle finding and there's no piecing all those bits together, because that is really was what sparked so much intrigue into Destiny's lore, is it? People have realised that there's a wicked story there, but you have to go looking for it. So that's a tough balance.
And like, I completely agree. I'm okay with them putting some things out there as just complete pieces. So the best example of that is clearly the Book of Sorrows. I'm fine with them throwing that out there. But the Book of Sorrows in itself is a great example of this because that contains within itself so many little mysteries that we can unearth. And the classic one was the one we brought up earlier. You know, it's a case of, are the worm gods and the Ahamkara the same species? Are they the same thing? And it gives us little hints that says they might be, but it doesn't definitively answer the question. So, yes, absolutely. And more item descriptions too. In fact, I think it's probably a good idea to have like an in-game database with this kind of stuff. So whenever you find a blue item or a green item, it just stores it. It stores the item description for you, and it, you know, it just sort of, you can scroll through that as part of like a massive list of everything that you've ever seen.
With a
so if
search
ever you wanted to
function.
go back, yeah, with a search function. Well, I mean, we're basically asking them to put Ishtar Collective in Destiny 2, right?
Sorry, Ishtar Collective. It's like,
I mean, that like if that
happens,
happens, that's a huge compliment to Baxter, because basically, I take zero gripes in saying that they may or may not have taken a look at what he's done and then being like, this would be interesting. We should totally do this.
Exactly.
But yeah, and the Dark Souls story elements are definitely something that we could use more of, as long as it's executed right. Again, I can't stress the You hit this on the head, Matt, when you talk about how they shouldn't spoon feed it, but they should keep the complexity. Right.
And I agree. I hope there is not only maybe items is too far, but I would be really happy with mission dialogues. I'll be really happy to get mission dialogues saved somewhere, because there's a ton of important information in the mission dialogues. And if you don't screen cap them when you play that mission, they're very difficult to find again. And there's even... the amount of hours I spend watching YouTube videos trying to find people that showcase the whole mission and transcribe that mission is ridiculous. So I'd love to be able to go back and see that.
There was a game that did like a cutscene library, and you could watch every single cutscene that happened throughout the game's story. And it was like one of those things that was like locked away in
Knights
like
of
the
the
credits
Old
menu.
Republic.
Was it something like that?
Yes,
Yeah, it was old
Knights.
school.
I know it was so. Yes, absolutely that. I remember it vividly.
And you could watch everything again if you wanted to. If you wanted to get the story in again, I don't think it's the full mission that you're talking about, Matt. But I think it's more like the cinematics and the information that happens throughout those intro sequences. Yeah, I think that would be awesome. And those cutscenes are so well done that I just think it makes sense for them to try to get as much bang for their buck with them, and that's a good way to do it.
Definitely. So the last thing on my list is, from a lore point of view of what I want to see in Destiny 2, is more character development like we've seen with Cade.
Yeah.
Because everyone has just, he is such a much loved character, and they've done so well with developing that character. They've really shown the potential that what they can do. He has intriguing lore. He has this really complex lore behind him. And on the surface, he also appeals to a lot of people that maybe don't read the Grimoire cards. And I would love to see more of those characters, because I don't particularly have strong feelings for Zavala or Ikora Ray. Maybe a little bit, but nowhere near as the level of Cade. And I would love to see some more of that character development coming through.
I can't agree with you more. I'm doing the Ikora Ray video right now. I'm working on the script, and it's so difficult to put in good pieces of information without stretching the video. It's one of those things where Cade's story is developed in such a way that he is the face of the Vanguard table. We don't even see Ikora that much in the Destiny 2 reveal trailer. She takes a backseat into some cool little action sequences, but she says, one line? Zavala, on the other hand, is the opposite to Cade, and that makes very much sense. Their personalities are opposite, but I think developing character backstories, especially the characters that we operate with, the Vanguard table, the speaker, the faction leaders, we need to see more of this so that players can attach themselves to these guys in a better way.
And I'll say two things about this. Number one, it's most important to do this given all the critique that was given to Destiny as a world that felt really dead and devoid of NPCs. Everybody was a disembodied voice over the radio, and that's not good for character development. If you can see Zavala kneel down over the corpse of a dead Titan and say, "I knew him well, a terrible loss," and then close the guy's eyes after he's dead and he can't regenerate, that gives Zavala humanity. I know that's a bit of a weird thing given that he's a working, but you get my point. The other thing I'd say is not simply the fact that I've lost my train of thought. Well done, Byf. Yay. Okay, cool. No, but it's again, it's very much a case of, yes, you need the character development in there, and I completely and utterly agree. Oh god, I'm kicking myself over that right now. I'll remember it just as we finish this too.
Do you think there's a possibility? Do you think we'll see a major character die?
Yes.
Oh, we haven't seen one yet, right? Have we seen one yet?
Not without the Grimoire card. In the Grimoire
I'm
cards,
still standing. I'm still standing by the fact that the Queen is totally not dead.
No, she's not dead.
She's not dead.
No, she's not dead.
No
they
way.
said that on the voice
On that
acting
one,
podcast.
exactly.
That she's
They let
returned.
it slip, basically.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well,
I mean,
true. So I mean like proper KO.
Proper death, like done,
Proper
permadeath,
death.
right? Yeah. Dude, if they're gonna do anybody, they need to knock out someone we're attached to, just to get the strings, the heartstrings.
Don't do it.
I don't know.
Kate.
I don't know necessarily, right? I don't think someone attached. What about the speaker?
But I think to make it more impactful, the speaker's character is developed in such a sense that we only know so much about him, and it's so very little. You know what I mean? Like we're about this story about where did he get his mask, the origins of his mask. I feel like if they did the justice of developing the character backstory just a little bit and then kill him off, it makes more sense to just be like, well, we're going to get rid of him because we don't have anything for him. You know what I mean? Because they basically, he takes a very large backseat in the overall story. It's one of those things. Look, if they got rid of the speaker, that would be kind of a shocker too. I think it would be coming out of nowhere. Like, what happened? Did he die in the Cabal attack? We don't see him in the Destiny 2 reveal trailer, do we?
No.
So, there's potential questions there.
This is the spot they're in though. Like, I don't feel attached to the speaker whatsoever, and I'll be like, meh, if he died. But it would be interesting. I would. Hopefully, we get that character development and we feel that attachment. And I would love for him to do something really bold, like proper kill a character off. Please don't do Kate.
I can totally agree on the fact that they are not developed as characters in terms of like the speaker, but then again, no one really is. I'll say this too, though. Part of what makes me want to see the speaker be the one that bites the dust is not just the fact that there's that one line, of course, saying I could tell you all the stories, brackets, but I won't. But it's instead because that causes an incredible amount of interesting upheaval, right? Imagine if the speaker is dead. That creates, for one of the first times ever, a power vacuum in Guardian society. So who does that immediately benefit? Well, you're looking at Osiris. The big O comes back again. So immediately you're thinking, well, how strong does his cult then become? You're having all the factions suddenly questioning, how does this structure still work with the speaker being gone? Can one of us potentially take over? Especially, I would look out for Arak Jalal on that front, because Dead Orbit is now basically way stronger than New Monarchy has ever been. Because not only do they now have the fleet, but also the city is doomed, practically.
Yep.
So, immediately their ideology has gained a whole load of leeway. And then on top of that, there's other actors outside of that. So not only have the Cabal lopped off the top of our, structure and leadership, which is a great boon for them, but look at individuals like the Concordat and the Trinary Star cult, These people that have openly rebelled against the city in one sense or another, they benefit in so many huge ways because of the speaker being dead. And that causes this amazing shift in the power of how the city and the Guardians need to manage the citizens, It's...
Well, yeah, this goes back to
faction
faction wars, right? Like, now we can potentially relive faction wars over again, like, without a consensus, without a speaker, without a government. We could fall back into infighting.
Exactly. It's like, we don't know the speaker much, but it's the Destiny equivalent of assassinating the president, It's crazy. This is the Kennedy, so to speak.
I wish they would expand a little bit more on the consensus in their overall role, because it feels like, again, the government of the last city is one of those things where we understand what the consensus is, but what decisions do they make as a governing body? We know what they've done in the past by removing the Concordat and replacing it with Future War Cult, right? But it's one of those things where what's going on with Lysander? Is he going to come back, like you're saying, Byf? I think the idea of removing the speaker actually does make a lot of sense, just from the political power struggle that could come from it. All of the fringe and exile factions and all of the factions that currently exist could start vying for power. It'd be a very poor time to do it, especially with the city being the way it is, but I think it'd be dope to see, honestly.
Agreed.
And the real question becomes, who is the next speaker, Is it one of those moments where they do the stereotypical thing and they're like, you're the new speaker, player? Or is it one of those things where they nominate a character from the lore, So what if this is something that happens in the Osiris expansion, and it turns out that they nominate Saint 14, who we somehow find, right? Wouldn't that be an amazing
There
moment?
has always been a speaker. There must always be a speaker.
I'd love to see that as just a storyline, right? It would be... especially seeing as there's all this indication that, the speaker called him son and he called the speaker father. That's like, it's clearly not a heraldic title, not something that is hereditary, but it's something that would be really interesting to see from a dialogue perspective and a character building perspective of quite literally the son filling in the father's shoes and taking on the role of the father all of a sudden. You know, that I feel like that would be an amazing little storyline to wrap things up on. But yeah, ideas.
Awesome. Well, that's all of our thoughts on what we want. It's quite a big to-do list. Hope you're taking notes for Destiny 2, although I think it's probably too late by now. But Byf, you're off next week, mate. You can report back, man. Let us know if any of those dreams come true with the gameplay.
Yeah,
reveal.
please let us know. Yeah, please.
Oh my
Stay
gosh.
tuned to your Twitter.
Literally, next thing that I'm going to do after all the Destiny 2 nonsense is done, on the flight home, I'm going to get internet, and I'm just going to be constantly DMing you guys, being like, guys, I know everything now. I will tell you all the things, and it's going to be, I'm so excited to see what they do with this, but yeah, it's going to be
excited.
good.
I'm excited and nervous. I think that those first 30 seconds, Byf, you're going to feel yes. You're going to go yes, or you're going to go, oh, please not.
It's got to be... I'm expecting the same feeling that I did when I saw the first ever Destiny trailer that I saw, you know? At least the first live one. You guys remember, this is total side tangent, but you remember back to 2014, 2013 at E3? That first vista over the Cosmodrome, and then suddenly seeing a fallen captain come out of nowhere, and then just sort of put his sights on an incoming hawk, and then we leave it, and the music plays, and it's all perfect.
Yeah.
I want to feel that moment again. I want to relive something like that, and with the premise that they've already thrown at us, the potential is there. I really want to see.
We got the foundation. Let's see what's built from there. All right, so where can we? Well, I'm sure you know where to find everyone, but let's round off the talk with that. Wally, where can we find you?
So my name is Sir Wallen. I am, out of the three of us, the smallest, and I was on a year-long hiatus, but I'm back now working with these two beautiful gentlemen. You can find me on YouTube. It's Iconic Gaming Group, but if you just search Sir Wallen, Destiny lore, you'll find it. No problem. Yeah, and then I'm on Twitter too.
Sub to him. He's the OG. Wallen is the original Destiny lore guy.
Yeah, but you guys have whatever OG-ness I had. You guys have definitely taken it. Now you guys are my inspiration. I want to make that.
OG-ness. You are the original, bro.
I'd say that we're all three OG. You know what I mean? Give it that, right? I don't like to. That's a lot of pressure, man. That's too much.
You're the first. Get used to it, man.
Yeah,
first and best.
That's it.
That's good. But yeah, YouTube and Twitter. That's where you can find me.
Awesome. Byf?
You can find me on Twitter at MyNameIsByf. You can also go ahead and follow me on both YouTube and Twitch. I'm doing some lore streams nowadays with Leah Loves Chief on a series we call Explore, where we're just going through and explaining the very ground level lore of Destiny, week by week, topic by topic. So you can catch that every single Wednesday when it airs on normal schedules, unless it's Destiny 2 stuff, in which case not gonna happen, but yeah. And then, of course, YouTube. If you just search My Name is Byf, you'll find my channel pretty easily. And, yeah, cover news and lore over there. So if you want to go ahead and sub, feel free to do so. But more importantly as well, make sure that you're also checking out Matt.
Yeah, oh, what a segue. Hey. You can find me on YouTube and Twitch, MyelinGames, MYELIN, also known as MyelinGames, MyelinGames, all the different ways people pronounce
Melon. Melon's now my favorite. I like
MyelinGames.
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 Yeah, MelonBot is my bot on Twitch. Okay. Yeah. You can on Twitch. We've got a schedule of raids, a lore stream, and also I'm trying to get better at PvP because I'm super scrub. But I just want you to know that it's because I spend so much time reading Grimlock cards. But I'm trying to improve for Destiny 2. So yeah, thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you, Byf and Wally. What an amazing chat. Hopefully you guys enjoy this and we can make it a regular thing.
Mm-hmm.
Hell yeah.
We got to do this after the reveal, guys. Let's get back together and do this.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. Yeah. We're going to grill your Byf. We're going to grill your Byf.
Hey everyone, Wally here. I just want to quickly say thank you so much for the continued support on this channel. It's definitely keeping me motivated to create more content. I gotta say, if you enjoyed this video, share it with your friends, like and comment. Every little bit goes a long way to getting this information out there. And if you want to support the channel further, there's a link to my Patreon down below. But that's never required, but it's always appreciated. We also launched an apparel shop that will be updated continually. We have some Lore Seeker shirts and some other goodies in there for you to grab. Do not forget to join the Discord server. I post lore scripts and new videos in there consistently. All links are in the description. I love you guys. Thank you.